thank you for tuning into my cultural competence video. I'm just going to get right into what I have here. Understanding how cultures and subcultures influence standards and values. To me, I think about this more in terms of location. For instance, some places are primarily Christian, for example. So most of the population will have grown up um, with and practice Christian standards and values, whereas, for example, someone who lives somewhere else, like Middle Eastern country, for example, will grow up following Islam, and they would have instead Islamic and Quran standards and values. Of course, there are many different factors other than geographical location and religion that have an influence on that. Now, my own culture, I myself personally, I grew up as a Pentecostal Christian. I found that even though I had many of the same values as other children when I was growing up, mine tended to be a little more on the extremist side. Um, I can remember, arguing with other children about their religious beliefs because I really was taught and believed that they would not be going to heaven because they didn't believe exactly the same things that I believed. Um, of course, since then, I've spent a lot of my life expanding my view of things, and I'm a well-rounded and open-minded adult. There was a time through my teenage years and early adulthood that I separated from the church completely and thought of myself as a non-believer, but I think most people will find that later on in their life they kind of get back to their roots. And I've since returned to being a Christian, and I'm a believer in Christ. I found God again in a time of personal need, and since then I try my best to follow Christian values and standards in my personal life. Um, and these would be things like thankfulness, compassion, endurance, justice, and peace, and wisdom, and you know, trying to do your best to be generous and kind towards others. Hilariously enough, this may be a little bit of a side note, but when I was a teenager, I wanted more than anything to be nothing like my parents, and I've actually. It's funny to see how I've grown, and I'm very much like both of my parents for sure. Um, so I'm going to get into the meat and potatoes of my assignment in a minute here, but I'm really looking at the Korean culture. So Korean values um, are similar, but a bit different to ours. And I've decided to do my um, project here on Korean values. So Korean values include obedience to family, hard work, protection of the family, respect and proper etiquette with family members and elders and superiors. The majority of Koreans are not religious, but some are Christian, some are Buddhists, and they have a bit of a history of Buddhism. And some people are Catholic as well. Um, Something that we need to keep in mind, though, and I need to keep in mind, is that our own personal views and beliefs with religion should really stay out of the workplace, regardless of what you believe. Um, I think that different values and cultures will will have a difference, especially in our profession. So we'll be working with a lot of different people, of course. I think that I just had a few examples I quickly wrote down here. A Korean healthcare worker working here in Canada, more specifically in a senior home, might be kind of upset um, because things are so different. In Korea, an elder will retire at around 60 and be taken care of by their sons. Here in Canada, this wouldn't really be true for all seniors, and um, rather, I think rather than being taken care of by family, um, here in Canada, we tend to rely more on senior homes, and not everyone, but I'm sure a lot of the folks that are living in there don't get visited by their family, probably as much as they should be or they deserve to be. Um, and as obedience to family is one of the most important Korean values, I think this would be upsetting to a Korean healthcare worker. Alternatively, if an elderly Korean person was living in a care facility here in Canada and didn't get visited often by their family, they would probably find this very disrespectful, and they you would probably notice that they would be quite depressed about that kind of situation. And I'm sure that many Canadian healthcare workers find it sad to see that kind of a situation as well, but it wouldn't have the same meaning or hold the same value, really. Um, Also, a Korean elderly person might expect you to talk to them in a very respectful manner, which we should be doing anyway, of course. Um, and they might even prefer that you bow when you greet them when you come in. It's something that is a sign of respect in their culture. Um, Now, cultural competence. My own take on this is culture is similar to the the direct and indirect costs of workplace accidents, in that there are some things you may be able to see on the surface, like things from pop culture, and under all that are the values and traditions that you don't see, like for instance, in pop culture, things that you might not necessarily know about. But I'm sure by now most people know about K-pop, and it's very interesting. But I doubt the same can be said about the rich Korean culture. Um, Cultural competence to me means that we are able to provide the same high standard of care, but on as much of a personal approach or individual approach as possible. For instance, it might be best to have someone who can speak Korean if you're caring for someone who is Korean. But that might not be an option. I don't think there are probably very many Korean speaking um, people in the healthcare industry here in Canada, at least not in New Brunswick. That um, might be something you'd be more likely to find in Ontario or British Columbia, somewhere that has a higher Asian population. But also, I think going the extra mile and even just learning maybe a few helpful words of the language would go a long way, and would be very appreciated. Also, I think that we should do our best to be mindful and ask questions. There might be some social or cultural boundaries that you're not aware of. And also keep in mind that everyone is different and has their own personal preferences as well. 안녕하세요, 루케스요, 반가워요. This is a formal way of saying hi. My name is Lucas. Nice to meet you in Korean. So again, I've decided to do my project on Korean culture, more specifically South Korean. Um, Koreans primarily speak their native language, Korean, but most South Koreans under the age of 40 will have taken English lessons in school and are quite competent at speaking English. Um, Showing respect is a really big part of Korean culture. At social gatherings, you have to wait to be introduced. Bowing is used to show respect and to greet people. The person of lower status will always be the first to bow. And handshakes are also used, but must be initiated by the superior or the elder. Since Koreans traditionally respect their elders, when people meet for the first time, they'll want to establish which one of you is older. Um, Also in Korean culture, the grandfather is given the most respect of everyone. Personal space is considered very important in Korean culture, and Koreans don't get into each other's personal space unless they're very close. Um, at all times, you would be expected to at least maintain 1 meter distance between you and a stranger, for example. Um, the and that distance can be bigger depending on how formal the interaction is. So, for instance, in a business conversation, the distance between people speaking to each other would be typically be larger. Um, it's also rude to buy an expensive gift for someone if you know they can afford to give something back of equal value. It's also a sign of respect to avoid eye contact with your elders or superiors. And another thing I found interesting is to never write someone's name in red ink because it will make people think that they're dead or that they are going to die soon. It's interesting to me. Um, Rice is very important in the Korean diet. Um, a lot of Koreans today really prefer some Western foods like hot dogs and hamburgers, things that we eat, but rice is still the main dish in a Korean meal. And it's usually served with many side dishes, mainly vegetables and soup, but always kimchi. Kimchi is fermented cabbage that's fermented with spices and different flavors. But it's usually present for every meal of the day. It's also preferred that people make kimchi at home rather than purchase it at a market. Um, Usually alcohol will also be present at mealtimes as well, with the most popular choice being a drink called soju, which is similar to vodka. It's a bit weaker, probably 20%, and mixed with beer or served alongside with beer. Traditionally, Korean people will sit at a low table while sitting on the floor. This is still very common today, and it's actually, people say that it's quite comfortable because they have heated floors, which actually sounds pretty nice. Also, everyone at the table must wait for the oldest person at the table to begin eating before they can start eating. It's a sign of respect as well. And also, to show respect, you should always turn your head away from an elder while having a drink and allow your drink to be poured for you instead of serving yourself. And make sure to serve others when you notice that their drink is empty, and make sure to use both hands. Very important. Um, it's also polite for the youngest in the group or the one who has invited a group, if you're going out to a lunch or a dinner, for them to pay the bill, either the person that invited or the youngest in the group. And tipping is very uncommon in Korea. It's expected that that would already be included in the bill. So that's different than here for sure. There are a couple of different holidays in Korea. They're very similar to our own holidays. The first one that I was looking at was called Chuseok. I'm not sure if I pronounced that properly, but it's basically a celebration for agriculture and the harvest, much like Thanksgiving here. And also they celebrate New Year's, but they also more um, more celebrate Solal, and this is the Lunar New Year. This is one of the most important traditions and holidays of the year. Um, and most businesses are closed. People take several days off from work, and they go to their hometowns, visit their family, visit ancestral graves. And on the day of Solal, everyone gets up really early, puts on their best clothes. A lot of times they'll wear traditional clothes, like formal traditional Korean clothing, and make sure to follow proper etiquette, and bow to their elders, reaffirm family ties, and feasts are held with special prepared food like rice cake soup. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but we're going to try. And dumpling soup. It's really important. They're also, they have many other holidays, but those are the main important ones. And also when a person turns 60, there'll be a huge celebration for their hard work and achievements as they move into retirement. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about health and wellness in Korea. It's expected that South Korean women born in the 2000s will live 90 years on average, with men living to be about 84. So this is from the article that I was reading. This is the highest life expectancy of all countries, it says. That might be partially due to their diet. The kimchi apparently is very good for your health, and it's a staple. Pretty much everybody eats it, um, and it has lots of vitamins, vitamin A, B, C, as well as lots of probiotics to help with digestion because it is a fermented food. And other than naturally healthy products, they are also always looking at new products to be introduced, and that sort of thing is growing in popularity in Korea as well. But there are some issues with the South Korean diet as well. So in addition to their um, kimchi, many South Koreans also eat a lot of ramen noodles, which is giving them way more sodium intake than they're supposed to have, than anybody's supposed to have. So along with higher consumption of meat and fried foods, this is increasing obesity in their country. Um, and the government there has started to advocate for reduced sodium consumption since 2016. Alcohol, like I said, is usually served at meal times. It's an essential part of daily life. Um, with Statistically, it says that South Koreans are drinking more hard liquor than anyone else in the world, according to Euromonitor. South Korea is unfortunately home to more alcoholics than any other country as well, with alcohol-related costs um, in healthcare resulting to more than $20 billion a year. On average, South Koreans consume an average of 14 shots of hard liquor a week, while Americans are ranked at about 3 and Russians about 6. And again, this information is coming from Euromonitor. South Koreans' interest in health wellness extends, far beyond their diet as well. They have something called Jimjilbang. It's a type of spa and sauna in South Korea that have heated floors, saunas, hot tubs, and this is believed to reduce heart disease, blood pressure, diabetes risk. The South Korean government is aiming to improve health and well-being of the citizens as well, with something called an enacted shutdown law. So children under the age of 16 are restricted from using the internet or accessing video games after midnight to reduce or minimize the risk of negative effects of internet addiction and gaming addiction, TV addiction, and those sorts of things. Something similar to what we're doing here. There's initiatives to inform parents to limit screen time here as well, but it's not a law. There's not a restriction in place. It's more of a guideline here. Another interesting fact here about health and wellness was the government also implemented a universal healthcare plan in 1989, and from a 2013 survey, South Koreans were the most satisfied out of 15 countries that were surveyed. Korean healthcare is rated high on patient satisfaction for access to diagnostic tests, hospitals, drugs, specialists, and also overall patient experience. Majority of the doctors that are practicing in South Korea are trained both in Korea and in other countries as well. And hospitals are generally equipped with the latest technology, although sanitation and infection control is apparently not always up to international standards. Families generally are expected to care for the patient's non-medical needs. So I guess the role that a personal support worker would play here, that would be expected to be taken care of by the family in Korea. Most elderly Koreans prefer Oriental medicine. Practitioners of traditional Oriental medicine are called Hanui. Because of strong family traditions, nursing homes are scarce in Korea. They don't have many of them. That would be more for an elderly person that didn't have family. to take care of them, maybe somebody that never had children. Um, yeah, most Koreans believe in natural ways of improving health, including eating raw food, um, taking walks, and getting fresh air. Again, saunas and spas, and they are encouraged because they believe that it's better for circulation. Um, Most Koreans will prefer to die at home, surrounded by family. The oldest son is most likely going to be present when the death takes place, and it's kind of an expectation that the eldest son would be there. Burial is preferred to cremation since um, visiting the gravesite is considered a sign of respect, something that they do often, usually on holidays. Um, and it's believed that the spirit remains close to the family to protect them and watch over them. And we have a similar belief like that here as well. Um, One thing I wanted to mention that is as a nurse, um, it's important to remember with Koreans that families would prefer to be directly involved with the care of a family member. And it's important to incorporate the family in tasks um, like encouraging the patient to get their exercises done or to eat properly. Um, and it's important to consult with the oldest male son about major medical decisions. Now, going to the other one that I picked here was about pregnancy. So traditionally, when a woman finds out that she's pregnant in Korea, she would first tell her mother-in-law, so that would be her husband's mother, and then her husband, and then her own mother, and then the whole family would um, come together to help her and meet her needs as she goes through the pregnancy. They believe that the baby experiences everything that the mom experiences, um, and they expect her to only look at beautiful things um, because they believe that the baby is experiencing that. They want the baby to only eat healthy foods or only perfect fruits. Nothing. They want everything to be perfect, basically, for the baby. Uh, and their pregnant women are not allowed to eat duck at all because they believe that the baby might be born with webbed feet. It's a little strange, but they also don't want a pregnant woman to eat tofu because it falls apart too easily, and this could make negative events take place. It's kind of a superstition, I guess you would say. Um, they have beliefs about predicting genders. So if a woman's pregnant belly sticks out roundly, they believe that that is going to be a girl, and if it has more of a flat shape, then that would be a boy that's going to be born. Um, During labor, mothers are given a cloth to bite onto um, and ropes to hang onto on the ceiling to help her with pushing. And she's expected to be silent as she focuses all of her body's energy into giving the birth. Um, and men are not present. The husband or father is not present at the time. He's in another location awaiting the the news of the delivery. After the birth, a straw rope is used to be tied to the door frame of the house to announce the birth, with chili peppers um, laced on it for a boy and charcoal for a girl. And once people see that, they stay away from the house to give them time to raise the baby up. Usually about 21 to 100 days. The placenta is kept and burned. That's a tradition. And the ashes are saved to be used as uh, the ashes are saved to be ground into a powder and mixed to make a healing remedy for when the child gets sick. The mom also drinks seaweed soup immediately after the birth, and this is still a common practice, a traditional thing. And because of the healthy properties, um, it might be something that I actually drink a few times a week over the next 2 or 3 months to to supposedly help with the healing process after childbirth. Um, After childbirth, women are not supposed to eat any hot or cold foods, just kind of tepid um, stuff. And they get about 30 to 40 days off after giving birth for work. They would be excused from work automatically for that amount of time. Um, and during that time, this is kind of another strange superstitious thing, is that during that period she wouldn't be allowed to go outside and can't put her hands or feet into cold water. Um, Same as here, newborns in Korea are always bundled up in warm clothes, even in the summer, to make sure they don't catch cold. We do that here. That's pretty much the same. Another interesting thing is the father-in-law would be the one to name the baby, with the name carrying a goal or a wish for the future of the child's life. So it has a particular meaning when the baby is named. And Korean women traditionally carry their children on their back with the baby's face against her back, and this is supposed to line up their hearts. Um, the grandmothers typically in Korea today still do this. And some mothers, it would be more common in the countryside. And parents would normally sleep with their newborn, and that's a custom that's still common today, and something that I did as well. I just took precautions to make it safe, make sure that my kids weren't going to be rolled over or fall off the bed. But yeah, I think that's a great. I think co-sleeping with your young children is and newborns is very nice, very good thing to do. Anyway, this has been very long, and I'm going to wrap it up now. But I hope that you enjoyed. I hope you learned a lot, and have a great day.